first State of STEM event. I'm Dr. Penny Lippert, the Executive Director. One thing I want to start with is we have a remarkable school. Remarkable. I don't believe there's a bigger decision that you need to make than what school is right for your child. And so we're so appreciative that you have selected our school. Our program today is going to walk through our past, what we're doing today, and our future. And as we do the walk, I want you to see how many dedicated people are here to serve your children. Each of us takes to heart the infinite potential of every child. And so every child in this school, our goal is to maximize what is possible for them. So, I am profoundly thankful to our staff, our board of directors, and our parent leaders for their dedication. Without so many pulling in the same direction, we could not possibly have achieved what we have achieved in such a short time. We're still a relatively new school, and we have made a name in the state and nationally, internationally too. To guide us this morning, we are honored to have Tony Dill as our facilitator. Tony has served 30 years in the Attorney General's office. He represented CDE, the Colorado Department of Education, and the State Board of Education from 1991 to 2017. In that capacity, he has been directly involved with the passage and implementation of the Charter Schools Act from its inception in 1994 to the present. It included arguing the case in the Colorado Supreme Court that established charter schools as constitutional. I guess we can thank that we exist for that work. We did. Tony also represented the Charter School Institute, the Colorado School of the Deaf and Blind, and the Colorado Commission on Higher Ed and other organizations. Since his retirement in 2017, he has been representing both charter schools and parents of district school students in special ed matters. Tony Dill.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's particularly a pleasure for me to have been asked to facilitate this meeting for this wonderful charter school. I just wanted to start by saying that when I started representing educational entities, it was a rather sleepy little legal practice, and then school choice hit. And it has led to a sea change. It's hard to remember what things were like 23 years ago. But for the first 4 years, we were involved in litigation almost every time a charter school started. Finally, in 1999, the Colorado Supreme Court said that charter schools are constitutional. And many of those same districts that, metaphorically speaking, were standing in the schoolhouse door saying no for all those years, have embraced choice and now are proud to advertise to their parents and their communities the portfolio of school choices and school options that they are able to offer to their parents. So it's really wonderful to be here and see how this is working out for parents and students in Colorado. I also wanted to say what a wonderful idea it is that I hope is adopted by more charter schools to start having biannual state of the school meetings with the entire school community, parents, staff, board members, because really this is your school. That's the whole point of the Charter Schools Act, that you can have these types of choices and have a far more direct say in your kids' education. I wanted to go over some of the ground rules for what we're going to be doing here today. First of all, I know this isn't exactly a theater, but if you could please silence your cell phones, that would be very helpful. The first hour of this meeting is going to be presentations by the STEM School Board, by staff, by the School Accountability Committee, and by the parent-teacher organization. For the second hour of this meeting, we're going to have questions and answers. Now, you have had the opportunity to fill out a parent feedback form. Those questions were brought in. They were taken into account in the staff and everyone putting together their presentations. So hopefully most of those questions are going to be addressed in the presentations you're going to see in the first hour. If your question wasn't addressed in the first hour, please feel free to come up and ask it in the question and answer session. Or you can also decide to address it directly with a responsible staff member. And hopefully by the end of the first hour, you will know who that responsible staff member is. The questions and answers are limited to the school community, so we're looking for parents and guardians of STEM students. Please line up right over here on this side of the stage. And when your turn comes, state your name, the number of students you have in the school, the grade level. Questions are going to be limited to 3 minutes per person, so everyone has a chance. And we have somebody taking minutes, so that if you're asking a question, the person says, I don't know, I'm going to have to research that and get back to you. We won't lose any questions. Those are going to be recorded. And then those answers are going to be included in a wrap-up document that's going to be prepared after this meeting. That's going to be publicly available, and I presume you will be able to find it on the website. Finally, this meeting will also be recorded and will be publicly available for any families who could not make it here today. And so, with that, I would like to turn this over to the chair of the STEM Board of Directors, Mark Elbert.
Morning, everyone. It's really great to see so many families here this morning. My remarks are very brief. I wanted to put this slide up here, not for me to go through all the statistics, but to mention to you a few salient facts about the school. As Penny mentioned, we're a very young school. We've achieved a lot. Currently, we're now the 11th ranked high school in the state, 7th ranked by SAT scores. Our debt has an S&P rating, which is very unusual in the charter world nationally. I think that's a very significant thing. We have very sound financials and very sound academics. Our student achievements are absolutely remarkable. I think you see a lot, you'll hear that later in the presentation, about communication and some of the accomplishments of our students and our faculty. So I want to thank you for that. One other thing, our students are achieving so much. Just last year, we don't have the data fully complete since graduation is May 18th. It's merely approximately 4 weeks. What happened to our mic? Our mic went off. So merely 4 to 5 weeks off is our graduation. But last year, we had acceptances at 54 different higher ed education institutions. Very significant for our students. A little bit about our history. As some of you know, we started with the inception of some very innovative group of founders. Our first year, we had about approximately 480 students, and now we're fully built out at this site. We're at the maximum allowable capacity based on our charter agreement with the school district of 1,850 students. We've had hyper growth over the last many years, and that's both in students, in faculty, in programming, and in facilities. This diagram shows you a little bit about the facility. Some of you are aware when we started, we had the building next door, that both of these buildings actually were industrial buildings. They look very similar. We converted that building over approximately a year and a half period to the middle and high school. We started off with middle school and grew that out to be a middle and high school. And then in 2015, we consummated an agreement for a lease purchase of this particular building. So we do have a landlord who has been very kind to us. We fit up the building, received an expansion of our charter, and we're now a full K through 12 charter school focused on STEM education. And we have quite a few plans for additional facility improvements that you'll hear a little bit later this morning. I'm excited to serve on the board. We have, I believe, 2 other board members here this morning. I'm not sure if there are any others. Roy Martinez and Tom Wendling. They are here in the audience, and they certainly can address any questions you may have. I want to turn the comments over to Leanne, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albert, and thank you for all that you do on our board. We appreciate it. Fabulous. Well, thank you all for being here this morning. I see so many familiar faces in the group this morning. Thank you for being here. And for those of you that I don't know, I look forward to getting to know you better. I am thrilled to be here today to tell you about the successes that we have had at STEM School Highlands Ranch this year, and then also give you a bit of a glimpse into some of the ideas and vision that we have for next school year. So I wanted to start out with a bit of an overview of our expense breakdown here at STEM School Highlands Ranch. So this is the pie chart that represents all of our expenses. This is from the third quarter this year. You can see we spent 58.9% of our budget on salaries and benefits, 15.3% on properties, that's our facility. We spent 6.3% of our budget on purchased services from Douglas County School District, and 6.5% on other property, that's things like our IT infrastructure and copiers. Some indicators that I think are important for you to understand here at STEM. We have many, many days in reserve, which is really important. If we were to suddenly receive no funding whatsoever, we here at STEM would be able to continue on our daily operation for 117 days. Just to give you some perspective, we are required to have 45 days. So that's 72 days more than is required by our bond. We also have our most recent audit results, which came back as an unqualified opinion. For those of you like me who don't understand audit speak, that is like an A++, best you can do, highest grade you can get audit, which is amazing. And they had no management recommendations for us either, which is really a compliment to our business office and to all of those folks that help us maintain our budget here at STEM. If you're interested in learning more about our budget, we have a financial transparency link on our website, and that has lots more information about our audit, about our budget, about each quarter, so please take some time to review that if you're interested in our financial status here at STEM. So one of the questions we get a lot here at STEM is teacher retention. What do you do to keep great teachers? What happens if you don't have a great teacher? Those are the questions that we're hearing from our families, so I wanted to address that quickly here. You can see in this chart we have our comparison to DCSD and the Charter School Institute. You can also see we have improved our teacher retention rate from 2015-16 to 30.8% turnover. Today, this year, we had a 16.9% turnover, and we're projecting about 19.5% turnover rate for this next school year. That breaks down to about 13 teachers. We have some teachers who are moving on in their careers, some teachers who are moving out of state to be closer to their families. We have some retirements, and of course some new babies on the way or babies that are already here. We also have to sometimes make the hard decisions. Sometimes our teachers need to make that hard decision for themselves if they don't feel that they're a good fit here, and the school also has to make those decisions sometimes as well. But as far as teacher retention, we really do the best we can to keep all of our amazing teachers here. But we also, of course, support and encourage the hearts of our teachers that wish to do something else with their careers. And then we, of course, need to make the hard decisions when that is the option moving forward. So one of the things that I wanted you all to be aware of, obviously our teachers here at STEM are amazing in what they do, and we really put a lot of resources into supporting and helping our teachers here at STEM. So some of the side benefits that you might not necessarily see in the job description of STEM teachers, we have a lot of teacher autonomy here at STEM. That means that teachers are able to create and be innovative in their classrooms at their own pace. They're able to do that in accordance to what is their own values and beliefs for their students, and also what they know is best for their individual students in their class. We have teacher voice at STEM. We have teachers that are involved in every single decision we make here at STEM, and we know that that is important for staff culture, for collaboration, and for the success of our school, and most importantly, the success of our students. We have limited other duties such as hall duties, study hall, that type of thing. We have leadership opportunities for any teacher who is interested in moving into a leadership role. We have a MARS team that provides support, teacher leadership support for our teachers. And we have an entire staff of folks that support students, but also support and work with teachers on a regular basis. Our teacher coaches, our social workers, our psychologists, counselors, learning support specialists, and our team of over 20 educational assistants all are here to help support teachers and help to support those students in their success at STEM. So one of the things that's most important to me is how do our staff members feel? How do they feel about working here at STEM? So I selected a few comments that I'd like to read to you quickly today about how our staff feels. I've taught at other schools that did not allow me to be innovative. As a teacher here at STEM, I am encouraged to grow and be creative. As a result, I get to witness my students' growth and success and celebrate that with them. That's from Mrs. Sackdahl, who is a middle school teacher. I walk through the halls each day and I know I'm looking at the faces of our future. The future leaders, innovators, and the people who will ultimately change our world in incredible ways. That's Mrs. Sabaggio, elementary teacher. I love the freedom and support to take risks in my profession. That's from Mrs. Dugan, a high school teacher. Each day I drive to work, I think about how truly grateful I am to work in such an innovative, incredible, kind, and supportive environment. That's from Mrs. Ritter, a middle school teacher. I also wanted to give you a state of the SYNC. As many of you may know, the SYNC is our innovation space, or one of our innovation spaces that is filled with technology and allows students and teachers to collaborate with others around the world. So far this year, we have earned $88,000 in donated technology and funds that help us to connect with others around the world. We've collaborated with professional education organizations, Polycom engineers, Sharp engineers, AVER demos. All those folks are working hand in hand with our students here at STEM. We also have partnerships with more industry members than we can count, but Lockheed Martin, the National Cybersecurity Center, Children's Hospital, and many more folks have been able to collaborate and work with our teachers and students here at STEM. So some of the outcomes that we have seen from this incredible space and this time and energy that has been put into our SYNC, our students are linking with industry professionals in higher education. Our students are really understanding global logistics. It's a real thing and they can see it happening in real time. Our teachers are experiencing real-world professional development. They're able to connect with other teachers and professionals around the world. And together we are solving this crisis of teacher shortage in the world and also just making sure that our students truly understand how they personally can impact their world. So that's a little bit about what we've done this year. Now I'd like to move into what we plan for next year. So as you probably know, we are working on an administrative restructure for next year, and I wanted to give you a little background. Our goal in this administrative structure is to improve the deliverables and consistency for parents and students. That is our #1 goal. And I think you'll see that our process has been very in-depth in looking at what could possibly be the best structure for our school moving forward. We focused on 2 areas when we're looking at school leadership. First is an area called Ikigai, and this is a new concept for us and something that I have really enjoyed talking about. It's the reason for being. It's a Japanese term, and there are many terms in other cultures that have this reason for being. It's what you love to do, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can be paid for. And if you can live in that area, the research says you'll find true personal and professional satisfaction and happiness. And of course, that is what we want in all of our staff here at STEM. So focusing on Ikigai, and then of course focusing on the strengths of all of our staff members here at STEM, and looking at the specific strengths of our leadership team, we started to develop our leadership model for next year. We first wrote down all of the possible tasks that need to be done in an entire school year. We looked at themes within those tasks, and we developed 5 different buckets. Our 5 buckets are professional development, curriculum and accountability, student experience and culture, which of course also includes parent experience, special programs, and finally the principal oversight. These 5 roles will make up our leadership team next year. Of course, each of these roles may be held by one or multiple folks on our leadership team, but we feel that this comprehensive look at leadership, while narrowing in on the focused energies and strengths of each member of the team, we will be able to create a very consistent, collaborative working environment to ultimately produce those increased deliverables for families and students. So you can see our professional development person will be in charge of staff culture, teacher growth and development. Our curriculum and accountability team will be in charge of curriculum alignment. They'll be in charge of data analysis and collection. Our student experience and culture will be in charge of student culture here at STEM. Discipline, our legacy and traditions, our RTI process, and they will also serve as the PTO liaison. Our special programs oversight will be in charge of IEPs, 504s, our ALP oversight, and also off-campus concurrent enrollment. And finally, the principal oversight will maintain the mission and vision alignment, district compliance, and oversight of STEM operations and instruction. So, we want to hear from you. What do you think of this new structure? What is your vision for our leadership team next year? What do you hope we're able to accomplish next year? And so we've established several feedback sessions for staff members, students, and for parents. And so you can see our parent feedback session will be on Thursday, April 26th at 8 a.m., and we will meet in the high school commons. And we hope that through this process of gaining feedback from all of you, we will ultimately be able to create a very comprehensive leadership structure with a focus on streamlined, efficient communication. Our goal for you is that you will know exactly who to go to when you have any type of question, and you will get a consistent answer from someone who has the depth of knowledge appropriate to answer any question that you may have.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can you add some alternate times for working families? I mean, working families can't make that.
We could do some alternate parent, and we also are thinking.
If it's one session that has multiple of all those breakouts?
Sure. Okay, and we will do some online collection of comments as well. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so finally, I wanted to talk quickly about other improvements for next year. We are so excited about some of the things that we have tested this year. We've done some beta testing, we've done some prototyping this year, and we are thrilled to be able to roll out some of those programs school-wide next year. First, our teacher growth and support team will be working with our Director of Professional Development to improve our teacher development and coaching cycle. We have a data investigation cycle that we will be rolling out school-wide. We had a successful prototype at the middle school this year, and we're excited to bring that to the rest of our teachers here at STEM. We will have an increased presence of sources of strength. Again, we had a successful rollout this year, but we intend on doing a more broad rollout next year for sources of strength. We plan on increased student and family engagement, particularly around curriculum events, so that parents and students are together engaged in curricular activities. We are developing a compensation review team for all staff members. We are improving our hiring process. I see some parents here who were able to participate in that improvement, and we're excited about the results from that improved hiring process. And we will, of course, continue teaching and learning on all levels and innovating in those areas, particularly using the SYNC for that worldwide collaboration, and always, always, always improving on our problem-based learning instructional model to be sure that all of your students are receiving the best education they can here at STEM. So that is the end of my section, and I have the privilege of introducing our next guest. Mr. Barry Barrington is our STEM school legal counsel, and he is going to address folks regarding special education this year, and then Mrs. Reese will be addressing our vision for special education next year. Mr. Barrington.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for 31 years. I started one of the very first charter schools in the state. We put our application in way back in 1993. In East London, I started a school called Jefferson Academy, and we opened the very first year after the law was passed. From that experience, I became part of the charter school movement I started representing other charter schools. At one time or another, I've represented over 50 charter schools. And so I have 25 years of experience in charter school movement, literally dozens of charter schools that I've worked with. And so I think that gives me perspective in terms of comparing your school with what's out there. And let me tell you, that you have a fabulous school here. I think you give yourselves a hand. This is wonderful. When the State Board of Education is evaluating schools, if there's an issue with that school, it typically looks at two things. It looks at academic achievement and it looks at financial stability. This is one of the best schools in the entire state on both of those measures. You have rock solid financials, you have your academic achievement speaks for itself. And so in terms of the big picture here, you are an exemplary charter school. It's a wonderful thing that has had. And I think that that metric, those two metrics, shouldn't be just given in isolation. Okay, you're a great school. Well, where did you start with when Dr. Euchre came on board? Where you were on the verge of closing down. Your academics were not that great. Your financials were frankly a joke. And the financials at that time were basically being run on the back of a napkin. And so from a standing start where you were on the verge of closing in just a few short years to where you are, I think that speaks to itself in terms of the board that has stepped in, and in terms of the administration, the teachers, the staff. They have served you extremely well and brought you from the cusp of closing to academic and financial excellence in just a few short years. I've been asked to look at and give some remarks on the special education side of things. And from here, I bring perspective from all the other schools that I've worked with over the years and the special education context. And in this school, you have a very good special education staff. You have over 100 special education students. I think the exact number is 116. And from all indications, the vast majority of those students, and I'm talking 97%, are satisfied with the services that they are receiving. Now, there have been some bumps in the road in the last couple of years. I talked to Wendy Jacobs, the special education lawyer for the district, a couple of days ago, and I said, Wendy, let's put our heads together and make sure that we've got our arms around exactly what's gone on the last couple of years, and we have a list of the claims that have been made, and there's the families of 5 students out of that 116 have made claims in the last couple of years. One of those claims has already been disposed with is what's called no findings. They made the claim, it was rejected by the authorities. One of those was resolved in what I would call a nuisance settlement. The parent accepted money from the school, a very small amount of money, just to go away, basically. That's what a nuisance settlement is. So we got 3 claims that don't fall into those categories. And I've looked at those, and I don't see any sort of systemic problems that those 3 students were working on their issues. I think that they're going to be resolved shortly, and I anticipate a time in the not too distant future, I'm talking weeks or months, not years, where there will be no pending claims, and so when we get those resolved. The important thing, though, is to understand what are these aberrations, are they bumps on the road, are they reflective of systemic problems in your SPED program? And I think it's clearly the former. I've looked at this school, the district has looked at this school, no one has identified any systemic problems in your special education program. And I think that's important to keep in mind. Well, someone says, well, are these 3 claims that we're talking about, and I'm talking about the ones that are going on, is that a lot? And I would respond, depends on what you mean by a lot. A lot is a relative term. And in terms of the special challenges that have been at the fore with this school over the last year or two, I don't think it's a lot. I think it's remarkably few, and because I don't know any other school in the district that has these same sorts of challenges that you've been facing. And so my overall evaluation is we've had a couple bumps. They're not serious bumps. We're going to get these resolved. And the most important thing is, the district staff, with my experience with over 50 schools, have not identified any systemic problems with your special education program. Thank you very much.
in charge of special programming, which will be a new role for me, but one I'm very, very excited about. So I'm going to help oversee special education, 504, gifted and talented programming, and Read Act primarily. So I just want to give a bit of background of where we are this year and our plans for next year. So we have some of the highest growth for Douglas County for our students on IEPs. Here's our 2016 and 2017 ARC data for ELA and math. We're consistently performing above state and district guidelines, not only for our general ed population, but for our special education population as well. We hosted an educational expert from Harvard this spring, Dr. Ellen Ratton, and she discussed how we can help students with processing speed discrepancies and how both teachers and parents can help support these kids. And then we've also this year had feedback, sorry, I can't talk, I got nervous, I apologize. So we've rolled out a new instructional model for special education where our LSS staff pushes and co-teaches particular classes for English and math. And that really helps our teachers work well with our LSS staff and then help support each kid and provide the programming and instruction that they need. That's worked really well. We've had great internal feedback from both our LSS staff, our general education staff, and the parents, which is wonderful. We also have a case manager who handles all of our paperwork, and that allows our LSS teachers to spend more time working with kids, which is exactly where their passion lies and exactly where we want them, not having to do the paperwork portion. And next year we'll be hiring a new case manager to oversee that process. So this is our ratios of who we have in the building. On the left is our Douglas County ratios, and on the right is our programming. So we're a 1 to 23 ratio, a recommendation of 1 to 25. We have 3 social workers and social workers and psychologists full-time for 1,800 students, so we're staffed well above and beyond district requirements. We also do the staffing early in the fall, and then as students add IEPs and plans and case services over the course of the year, we don't restaff until the following fall. So I expect our speech language pathologist numbers to change a bit for next year. And then our goal next year, we are going to continue to focus on child-centered education. We are here for your kids because we love your kids. Each and every member, each general education teacher, and each member of your administration loves your children. So we're going to keep doing that. And we're going to keep making sure that every kid gets the education that they need. We're going to keep working on co-teaching and improving that process of having 2 teachers to support the needs of all learners. We're going to make sure that every parent for every IEP meeting has their paperwork 10 days in advance with 0 exceptions. It's going to be great. And then I'll be here to oversee the process, help provide support, anything you need. So if you have a name and a face, if you have a question, come and find me. It is a new role for me, so if I need to find an answer, give me 24 hours, I'll have an answer, and I'll get right back to you. So next up, we have Miss Tracy Grove, who is a wonderful learning support service teacher here. She's fabulous and amazing, and we love her to pieces.
Good morning. My name is Tracy Grove, and I am the middle school learning specialist here at STEM. I volunteered to be a representative today for our incredible team of caring professionals. We are a team that cares very deeply for our students. We care very deeply for all students, but especially those students that we service directly. Not only do we meet the state and federal requirements, but we exceed them daily. And I just feel it, but you need to know that. Every single one of us starts with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Students that we service already struggle with learning, and so we need to start with the basics in order to get over that obstacle. If they are hungry, we will give them a snack. If they are sad, we will support them so that we can begin learning. If they have anxiety, we will work with it, we will work through that. We can't start learning if we don't have our basic needs met. We are their refuge. We are the ones that help them navigate through school, through relationships, and through responsibilities. And that's what we strive to be every single day. We work as a team for all students with special needs. We build relationships with students and parents first. These relationships with students, parents, and teachers are as important as building the skills that these students need to be successful. We support all teachers with differentiating and providing alternatives for learning. The teachers use us as a resource. They feel comfortable with us. We build those relationships with the teachers for all students when they don't understand what to do or how to work a situation. We come up with ideas with those teachers. It's very important for us to have that relationship piece. We meet as a team, which is unfounded. We meet as a team twice a month with our administration. We go over every student's needs. We talk about their successes, what we get to celebrate, where they're having problems, what the behaviors are, what's their mental wellness. We work for the whole child. Every single action is taken to give our students the tools that they need to grow. Thank you. I would like to
Thank you, Tracy. We really appreciate everything that you do for our students. Like Tracy said, I'm Caitlin Gipple. I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager here. When we look at communications at STEM, we want it to be ongoing and a two-way dialogue between the school and between you as our STEM community. And that's at the heart of anything successful, and that includes schools. We are committed to communication as a marathon and as a long-term partnership between you all and between us, as well as staff and students, so that we can support our school and our students best. So my role just helps you to understand what my goals are, and that's to communicate and engage with our entire STEM community. With over 1,800 students, this task is all-encompassing, so it just highlights the need for one person to have communication responsibilities. That way, I just oversee and make sure that from kindergarten through 12th grade, news and updates are getting to you in a timely manner. But of course, the marathon continues and we're always working to improve. Some of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis to support the internal communication between the school and our community is our weekly newsletter that goes out on Thursdays. You may have seen it revamped at the beginning of the school year. We really hope for this to be a one-stop place for you to go for all school news, for exciting highlights from the previous week, and also just to give you an idea of what's coming up. I also manage and update our website, and I work with our staff to make sure that they have the tools that they need to be updating the portions of the website that they're responsible for. So we have enrichment, student support, and athletics, just to give you an idea. I also help answer your questions. We are happy to get your questions anytime, and if we don't know the answer, we'll work quickly to find someone who can help you with that question. I also work with our social media platforms and helping teachers to get the word out about the events and the special programs that they work so hard to plan for our students. And then as well as just all of the communication materials that go out to you, helping to draft those and get them out to you in the form of letters, bulletins, and flyers within the school as well. The big announcements. This is something that we hope to continue to improve, and with change, of course, is always hard. So we want this to become a smoother process. We have worked with a team of parents, SAC, and PTO to create new communication strategies. That way, we are all on board with how to best get the news out. And we want your feedback as well. So That includes our State of STEM, which will be starting at least once a year going forward, and then also a formal process for soliciting feedback from you all. Prior to making any big announcement, we have plans to have staff, parent leaders, and admin come together to review and make sure that we are all on the same communication wavelength. So although most of my job focuses on the internal communication, I just want to highlight how important it is to also focus on external communication. And charter schools, which I know Tony will touch on this later, depend on funding in the form of things like grants and support from the community. And we also just want to make sure that we're telling our story, because schools that continue to raise large funds are able to put that money back into the school to support programs and students. And the way that they're able to do that is through marketing and national reputation. Not to mention, it's also very important for our students when they go to apply for colleges to make sure that their school does have a positive reputation and that our story is being shared, all the amazing things that our students and teachers do in the classroom every day. So just a few things that I want to highlight that we work on for external communication is developing relationships with Douglas County School District. So you might have seen some of our stories featured in their app that they use, or on social media, or in their weekly newsletters as well. And then we also work with any of the other external communication when it comes to working with industry partners, tour groups, making sure that they know everything that we are about and what our students and staff are doing. And how you all can be involved. So like I mentioned, communication really takes all of us at the school. And we would love for you to consider joining our Parent Communication Task Force that we started this year, and we will continue on throughout next year, because we do want to hear from all parents representing different grade levels what's working with communication and what needs improvement. You can always reach out to us if you have questions or concerns, like I mentioned earlier. And another option for you to be involved is to attend board, PTO, and SAC meetings. And just to wrap up, some exciting highlights from this year. It's been a great year in communications as far as stories that have been told, and it's so amazing to see when we do have a reporter that wants to come do a story on our school, their faces just light up and they see all the amazing things that students are doing. We had, you may have seen, front page of the Denver Post featured our synchronous learning room that Leanne talked about earlier. And we also had a big story on girls in STEM education, where 2 of our staff and 1 of our students was interviewed, which was featured in all 18 of Colorado Community Media's newspapers, so that includes Highlands Ranch Herald. And you can see all of these highlights on our awards and accolades page on the website. So now I'll pass it on to Robert Hornstrom, who will talk about facilities. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robert Hornstrom, I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at STEM. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. I've greeted you many times during the mornings as you drop off and pick up your kids. And one cold morning I was standing out there and it dawned on me that I'd been here before. I was a 6th grade crossing guard. So I was drawing some comparisons, and then and now. One thing that I saw was that trucks back then only had 2 doors. I do miss my whistle, and I really had less gray hair than I did back then. But I also dislike standing out in the cold. So one of the things that I want to say is that I really enjoy seeing your kids come and go to school. I really appreciate that. Here's a sample of some of the accomplishments that we've been able to achieve here at STEM. And so I'm not going to point them all out, but I just want to pick on a couple. We did complete a conceptual master plan in 2016. We built a K-1 playground in early 2017. We reconfigured the school drive line into 2 drive lines, given our transportation management plan, and that was last fall. And then one of the other things that we did was we just recently upgraded our public address system throughout the school, just in January. And so what came with that system is that we added some security measures that we didn't have before. We now have the ability to reach every classroom as far as to give them an advance notice of some impending danger. We have an outside remote dial-in system so that an administrator can call in if they see something going on. We added outside speakers to the playground areas so that people can be advised as to what's going on. Some other security measures that we've done was we added some additional cameras on the campus. All of the exit doors now are alarmed. And we've also put in our LED parking lot lights so that increases visibility out there for safety. So one of the things that happened in 2015 when the school expanded to a K-5 to include it into this particular STEM school was this document, which is called the Site Development Plan, which was approved to Douglas County. So approved through this is the playground, the K-1 playground, but also additionally what was in this particular document was the approval for a high school patio that will be constructed on the north side of the facility. So that is currently being developed. But the other thing we're going to add is we're going to add a middle school patio, which is directly in front of the middle school. The one piece that I think that's been long talked about is we're actually going to put up a flagpole this time. Here's the timeline to that. The design is almost complete. We hope to be able to put this all together and have it ready for the start of school next year. The other thing that I talked about was the conceptual master plan. One of the things that we saw in the 2015 document was it had some gaps. We didn't have a play field. And we also didn't have another playground for the 2-8 folks. So what we look to do is we look to try to develop these particular aspects and be able to have those types of facilities so that all kids can use them. One of the things that we're first looking to do is the play field. Now the play field will go on the vacant lot that is directly out here to the east. We put in an application last year and we got rejected as far as our play field. And so we've taken into consideration all of the comments that the Douglas County Commissioners have made. We look to try to add improvements to as far as being incorporating those improvements into our new plan. We really want the play field, and so we're going to go all out to make sure that we get that. One of the other things that I believe is also very well needed, and that is that this is the timeline to that particular construction. What we hope to do is to go for the application in June, be ready to start to build, and we hope to have it completed by the end of the year. That'd be the calendar year. So going to the county commissioners meeting, it was similar to going to a wedding, where you enter the church, and all of a sudden you realize that one side of the family is lopsided. There's too many attendants on one side, and there's not enough attendants on the other side. So this STEM family is now asking that you show up, okay? We want your love. We want you to show your love at the commissioners meeting. And there is a sign-up form over here on the table, the sign-in form. And what we will do is we will notify you directly as to when that particular meeting will be. And we hope that you come, we hope that you speak, and that will get us the feel that we need. Thank you very much for your time. And now I have the privilege to introduce Sarah Phillips.
Good morning, my name is Sarah Phelps, and I'm the enrichment coordinator here at STEM. I've worked here since the fall of 2012 and love witnessing all the changes and growth over the last several years. There's been a lot. STEM's enrichment program, which is previously known as STEM Academy, but changed last year to enrichment to be housed under the school, has been around since the opening of STEM in 2011. Highlights from those early years include programs that are still popular today, such as our Best Robotics team, TSA, First Robotics, in addition to new programs such as Fun Friday. Those first board members and mentors for engineers and industry professionals who had a heart to serve students and share real-life knowledge and experience, exposing them to possible career fields and providing fun outlets. This year, with the help of community partners, industry mentors, and our amazing parent volunteers, there's a lot of you here, we were able to offer 40 programs across the 3 school levels with around 950 registrations. Some of our highlights for the year, our Best Robotics team, that stands for Boosting Engineering, Science, and Technology, advanced to the regional competition once again, which this year was held in Colorado for the very first time, saving them a long bus ride to Arkansas. At the TSA State Conference in February, about 180 students represented STEM, with a large number of them winning individual and team awards. And 2 of our students were elected to the state officer team, which is a huge accomplishment. We had a number of middle school and high school Cyber Patriot teams advance through several rounds of competition, with middle school teams winning 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at the state level, and winning 1st, 2nd, and 2nd in the state level at the semifinal level. This year was our first middle and high school theater production, Into the Woods. We hosted 2 elementary kid stage theater productions, Beauty and the Beast and Oz. Our hardworking first robotics team powered on with another great season, and will have their season-ending banquet next week to celebrate their accomplishments. We also had several elementary first Lego League teams compete at local competitions this past fall. This year, several Destination Imagination teams competed, with one advancing from a competition this last weekend to qualify for the Global Finals in Tennessee next month. We also saw the addition this year of several new programs such as elementary yoga and ballet, Canvas in the Classroom, Craft Club, and Art Club, in addition to the continuation of a lot of our amazing programs like fencing, chess, literary magazine, and more. We have several great opportunities coming up this summer. We have Camp Convention for elementary in June, a Lion King Music Theater Camp, also for elementary in June, a drama camp for middle and high school, robotics camps, and cyber and coding camps as well. For more information, you can always visit our website or reach out to me by email. I'm always looking for new club and program ideas and for help from you guys. Next, I'd like to invite up Karen and Renee from our school accountability team.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name is Renee Borchard, and I'm one of the SAC co-chairs this year.
And my name is Karen Whippadock, and I'm the other STAC co-chair. And one of the things we did, it's really important how to spend your time at STEM. There's so many things happening, there's lots of meetings. So we asked our regular attendees of SAC meetings what were the major benefits of being there, and our SAC members also responded. And so this is sort of some of the things they had to say. We're really where the stakeholders intersect in one place, and you hear from teachers and administrators and the board and reports from the district level. So we think we're a good place to sit.
So just to give you an idea of what SAC really is, it's the School Accountability Committee. It's an advisory committee made up of parents who are elected by the parent community, as well as school staff and community members. We are there to, the purpose is to provide insight from the parent community to STEM and to STEM administration, as well as our board of directors. We really are a conduit to connect the school and to provide oversight on various components of the school's operation. Each year, as required, we review the STEM Unified Improvement Plan, or UIP. We also develop priorities for that, in addition to giving suggestions on budget priorities, as well as parent concerns to our school administration.
At our meetings, we cover special projects like the playground, the strategic plan. We have guest speakers about all areas of interest that we get directly from parents, like the GT program. We talk about college readiness, standardized testing. We receive updates every single month from elementary, middle, and high school directly from elementary, middle, and high school teachers. We have an administrative representative that provides us with updates about school goals and plans. And at each meeting, we hear from all of those people, plus parents, plus we hear from board of directors members, and we get reports from things happening at the district level. So it really is that stakeholder intersection that happens every third Wednesday from 6 to 8.
So just a few things that we've accomplished this year with SAC for 2017-2018. We helped develop the parent survey, and that will be coming out in the newsletter this next Thursday. So please make sure that you complete that so that way your voices can be heard. We also reviewed the Unified Improvement Plan that I spoke of. The Colorado Department of Education this year made the distinction that any schools that were within the performance plan for their, or performance category for the school performance framework, which is the highest level, and that means you either met or exceeded any of those performance indicators that were put in by the state. STEM was one of those schools, so we are within that performance plan. So because of that, we do not need to submit a UIP this year. So next year will be the year that we will submit the UIP to the state. Also, we adopted new SAC bylaws that were updated in 2017 by the district. And so we updated ours to match theirs, and we had those approved by our STEM Board of Directors. And another amazing thing that happened this year was that we were able to welcome a new community representative. Her name is Susan Mays, and she works with Arcadis just over here in the same business park. And so we're looking forward to her bringing some invaluable insight to our group.
One thing we've worked really hard to establish is SAC is a valuable asset to the administration and the board of directors. And one of the ways that we did that was we did make an amendment to the bylaws where SAC has committed to have a member present at all the board of directors meetings so that we are always in the loop of what's happening there and we can bring them into the loop of what's happening in SAC. And really SAC and PTO this year have become the go-to group for parent input, and it's been an invaluable relationship to build. We also established the buddy program directly from a parent who attended a SAC meeting, said, hey, I think this would be a really good idea. We worked with the communication staff. We went running with the buddy program. PTO is going to expand it next year. And we also created a communication action plan that Caitlin talked about a little bit. We got some parent feedback about how they feel about big announcements are made. We synthesized that into one document. We presented it to the board. And we really take that parent feedback and try to make changes at the school based on that parent feedback that helps everyone. We really try to be the place where your voices are heard. And we have elections right now where the statement of interest and bio can be submitted by April 19th, and then we'll hold elections. We have 4 positions to fill on SAC.
So lastly, SAC would like to thank every parent who's ever come and attended one of our meetings. We do know that your time is valuable. We also want to thank anybody that shared feedback through the SAC email. We do appreciate that as well. Just a special thank to our SAC members. We have elected parent members listed there, as well as our staff, community reps, or community rep. Our administrative rep is Dr. Johnson this year, as well as our PTO reps who have joined us as well, and our board of director reps, Tom Wendling and Roy Martinez.
Everyone is always welcome to attend a SAC meeting. We have 2 left this year, one on April 18th and the final one on May 16th. They are held from 6 to 8 p.m. in the elementary school cafeteria. And you would never know this building was full of 100 high schoolers last night until 2 a.m. But it was. And that is a really big thanks to our PTO, who provided an amazing representative to organize after prom for those juniors and seniors. And thank you to lots of parents who were there helping that I see in the audience. I know we're all very tired. So we would like to introduce Angela Tolar and Lynn Paris as the PTO reps.
And I want to thank Karen and Renee for partnering with the PTO this past year as we've been building and growing. That was a huge help. So hi, I'm Lynn Paris.
I'm Angela Tolar. We're the PTO co-presidents. And we actually come from another school, so between us, we've got, what?
Somewhere between 15 to 20 years, I'd say, PTO experience.
So in case you don't know what STEM PTO is, it's the parent-teacher organization. We were formerly referred to as STEP, and we felt like nobody understood what that name was, so we changed it to be consistent with the Douglas County, the Douglas Foundation for Douglas County Schools, and what they call parent groups, to make it more easily identifiable to all of you. All parents and all teachers and all staff members at the school are automatically members of the PTO. And as such, you are welcome to come to any meeting we have, and we encourage you to join us and share with us your talents, your questions, and your concerns. Our meetings are held the second Wednesday of every month, and if you can't join us in person, You can either join us online through Facebook Live, or you can watch the meetings after the fact.
Yes, please join us. Don't be shy. Everybody is a member if you're a member, staff member, so come on down. All right. So this was a year of rapid growth for the PTO, and as Angela pointed out, with our experience, we want to lend that to STEM to help really grow it into a robust program at STEM. Just some of the highlights that we accomplished this year. We kind of grew the volunteering members of the PTO between 3 dedicated members to a network of over 100 with a really dedicated exec board too that's accomplished a lot, as we'll soon see. We expanded our communications offerings from just one monthly meeting to having established liaisons between the different groups that are at school with the board of directors, SAC, student council, enrichment. We also started Facebook Live of our meetings so that there's more opportunity for parents to really see what the PTO meetings are all about and get a better idea of what was happening at the school and what was to come. And for fundraising, we took it from about 1,300 last year to about 80,000 this year and growing. We still have a year and a goal of 100,000, but wait, there's more. and then it was really important for us to establish some more community building opportunities since we're a school that comes from all over the city. It's really hard for parents and families to meet each other. So we're doing all we can to invent those opportunities so more people can get to know each other.
So, as far as how we raise money, we tried to focus on one main fundraiser each quarter. So, what you saw in the fall was we did STEM Gives, and that was a direct giving campaign where we raised about $60,000. Coming up this fall in a few weeks, on April 28th, you're going to see STEM Fest, which is an event you've seen before, but we're tweaking the model just a little bit. So you'll see familiar elements, you'll see new elements, and that will add to the fundraising that we're having, and hopefully with that we will hit our $100,000 goal. And then we've had smaller initiatives, and I'm sure you're familiar with the drive-line signs for restaurant nights.
So in the blue box, you'll see some of the community building activities I was just talking about that we added in this year. We expanded the STEM Blast Off. For those of you that were there, you saw that it was a much bigger event than it had been in the past. And we're planning to do the same thing with STEM Fest, April 28th, so make sure you write that in your calendars. It's going to be super fun. We have a lot planned for that day, teachers, clubs, everybody's getting involved. It's going to be great. So, yes.
So what else did PTO work on this year? As you can see, there were a number of other initiatives. The directory after prom, which you just heard about, student-led initiatives that we've assisted with, as well as helping to support some of the club fundraising. One of the other things about PTO is we didn't want to be a one-hit wonder this year. We wanted to establish a foundation where parents can come in and continue the success in the fundraising that PTO has done this year.
Yeah, and just on that note, so we couldn't have accomplished all that we did this year without this fantastic team listed on the board of so many parents and staff members that really help support us and get us to where we are today.
If you are interested in joining the PTO, if you're interested in sharing concerns, comments, questions, please contact us. We put up the email address for you guys to get in touch. Come to a meeting. And then, if you're interested, we would love to have you volunteer at STEM Fest. By the way, shameless self-promotion for our event. And then we are also looking for additional board members for the upcoming school year. So if you haven't considered joining the PTO before, please really think about it because we'd love to have you join us and help the school.
Yeah, the more people that join us, the more we can definitely accomplish for our students. So. And with that, we'd like to invite up Tony Dill to speak on Charter Schools fundraising. Thank you.
Somebody get in silence their cell phone. Am I going to deliver these ears out if I take this? Okay. been given the unenviable task of trying to explain in 2 minutes or less the public school finance system in Colorado and how it applies to charter schools. This might be a little easier for me to do if I actually don't look at any notes. But first of all, the Public School Finance Act. And it's basic for every year the General Assembly decides how much money it can afford to put to public schools. That money then goes into the School Finance Act, which has a very complex and Byzantine formula that takes that amount, determines how much every district will get, and then divides that up into a per pupil amount for every one of the 178 districts in the state. For instance, smaller districts get more money, the assumption being you're a small rural district, you don't have the economies of savings. Some districts get no money at all. Why? Because they're generally Aspen and Steamboat Springs, and they have all those million-dollar houses, and they raise every penny they need from property taxes for all the rich people who live there. Most of the big urban districts fall someplace in the middle. So what you wind up with, if you are in Douglas County, is you have a set amount that that district is allowed to spend per pupil who enrolls in the district. Okay, so how does this affect charter schools? Well, if you are, a set of parents and educators and community members who think you have a wonderful idea for a school, you can apply to that school board, the Douglas County School Board in this case, and say, we have a great idea, we want to start a charter school in your district. And if they agree and they approve that application, then you negotiate a contract with the district. And once it's signed, congratulations. What exactly do you have? Well, you don't have a building. It is extremely rare for a charter school to just be given a building by the district. You don't have teachers, you don't have books, you don't have equipment or computers or anything else. What you get is a guaranteed per pupil income stream. For every pupil who enrolls in your charter school, you get 95% of what the district's PPR, per pupil revenues, are. By state law, they take 5% right off the top. The district keeps that for administrative overhead expenses. But wait, there's more. Because in most districts, including Douglas County, part of that contract negotiation process is the district saying, well, there are certain services we want you to buy back from the district. In other words, you contract with the district. And you're required to, by your contract, to pay the district to provide certain services. These can range from, sometimes food services, sometimes transportation services. Usually special education services are part of that package. So you have to agree that you're going to pay the district to provide certain services for you. So after all is said and done, you're generally less than 90%, somewhere between 80 and 90% of per pupil revenues is what you get. And what you have to then do is you have to find a place to put your school. Now, we all know what property values and rent prices are like in the Denver metro area right now. It can be very difficult for a charter school to find an affordable place to locate. I've seen schools, and actually some of them great schools, okay? Not saying they're not good schools, but they wound up in an abandoned Safeway. They wound up in an abandoned office building. They wound up in, I guess this was an industrial building when STEM took it over. It sounds like it had to do with manufacturing. In one case that I always kind of get tickled up, in Aurora, we had a charter school that located in an abandoned strip mall and kind of completely renovated. The ones that kind of, go out and you wind up with check cashing places and stuff. Well, this one was a charter school. And so right off the top, there are a lot of expenses before you even get to hiring teachers, purchasing curriculum, textbooks, and equipment that charter schools have to be responsible for. That you generally don't see in regular district schools because districts can raise taxes Districts can collect mill levies. Districts can have economy of scale. For instance, it's far more expensive. You get the same amount per pupil, whether you're in first grade or 12th grade, but it's a lot more expensive to run a high school than it is to run an elementary school. So they put it in a pot and they have those economies of scale. You generally have that at a much smaller level with a charter school. And that's one reason why community involvement with a charter school is so important, and why you're going to be hearing that again and again. Hopefully they don't sound too desperate, but community engagement and parental engagement in the charter school in terms of fundraising is very important for this type of educational choice program. Now there is some good news on the horizon. Last year, the General Assembly passed a law called House Bill 1375. This requires districts going forward, starting in 2018, to establish a plan where they will equitably share those bond revenues and mill levy revenues that districts can raise with their charter schools. And so we're at the beginning of a process that might result in there being some more money for charter schools, especially in terms of their capital construction and facilities needs. And we're hoping that that's going to alleviate part of the problem. But remember, people saw this as a trade-off going in. You might get more money, but you're getting more flexibility. And they figured that that would result in you being able to be a mean, lean educational machine. So that's kind of the concept of school finance and how it applies to charter schools, and why charter schools have some unique problems when it comes to certain of their financial needs. Now we're going to go into Q&A. Q&A is open to anybody who's in the STEM community, parents, guardians, students. You will, if you would line up here, there is a microphone. The questions are limited to 3 minutes per person. And I believe we have a nice young lady who's going to be holding up a sign that you have 1 minute left, and then a sign when your time is up. So, if anybody has any questions, please come on. Hi, and just a reminder, because I think I forgot to mention it, if you could give your name, number of students in the school, and grade levels.
Okay. My name is Jodi Pandya, and I have one student in the school. He's in 10th grade, and he's doing very well. I think that's important to note, so that any frustrations I have are not due to, me being like, oh, he's doing terrible, it's all your fault. So I think that's important to know. I want to thank you all for putting this on, and thank you for all of the information you've provided. And I recognize that you do want to highlight the positive aspects of the school. However, there are, since my son is in 10th grade, obviously my questions have to deal with the high school. I understand that STEM education is important, and I'm very happy for the elementary students and their parents. However, I'm curious as to why the decision was made to expand the school from middle school, high school to elementary school when there were not enough facilities for the high school, such as a gym, that's nice, but a cafeteria where, my student said, well, half the time we eat outside because there isn't enough place to sit. That's one question in terms of facilities, financing, etc. And then I did not hear anything about the decision to change the high school principal. I heard about, okay, for my son, this is what happened, but and maybe like a cryptic email, but I didn't really understand why. But I understand there's been quite a bit of turnover with the high school teachers, and according to my son, which, I don't come to school here, but again, he is doing well. He said, those teachers were strong teachers, they were polite, everyone's very upset about the high school principal leaving. I don't understand what was, there was something wrong, I could get it, but I don't really understand it, and the students are not happy about it, and as a parent, it's hard to see sort of like the morale where he's like, well, I could go somewhere else next year. The last 2 years, he's like, I like it here, I want to stay here. Now he's like, whatever. And without the traditional high school experience of a gym and me having to drive him literally, 10 miles for practice, 20 miles for a game, the main reason we're here is academics. So that's needs to be consistent and strong.
So we have two questions. The first one has to do with the decision to expand to an elementary school, I guess, instead of focusing on the high school in terms of where you're putting the resources, and then why you replaced it in the high school.
Yes.
A lot packed in here. So to the first part, what we noticed, as you saw from the graph, we started as a 6-9, growing each year through high school, and that was the original vision. What we noticed with our 6th graders, they came from 90 boundary schools, and if you can imagine starting your 6th grade curriculum with students coming from 90 different schools, we had massive remediation. The first question is, what if we started at kindergarten and we grew our own pipeline, adding 100 students at 6th grade, which we could remediate efficiently, but what would the outcome be if we could start our program so much younger? And every day we are so surprised. For example, our kindergartners presented to the U.S. Patent Office, and some of the designs, we happened to have a Google engineer touring. He said, I promise not to take that design, but that's the best design I've ever heard of. So even our 5-year-olds, once they get to 6th grade, our program will totally change. And so that's why we added the elementary. To your other question, I'm going to hand it over to our legal counsel.
And to the question about the change in the high school principal, I have advised the school not to respond to reasons for personnel changes. I'm sure you understand that personnel issues are confidential. If you guys had a change at your school or your company, you wouldn't want that company going around and telling people, okay, this is the reason that we did something for you, or this. It's confidential. And so I'm advising the school, and I hope they take my advice, not to respond to that question. I'm sorry.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Hello.
Hi. Hi, my name is Erin Gomez, and I am the parent of a 7th grader, one kid, and he's a very happy 7th grader, and we love it here. My one main question is at the board of directors meetings. It is very difficult when a parent brings up a topic, the board of directors says, okay, they hear it, and then that's all. They don't respond to the topic there. Of course, I understand for legal reasons they can't always do that. But I was wondering if there might be a method for parents in advance of the board of directors meeting to submit some questions so that they would go to the board of directors meeting, the board of directors might be prepared to answer some of those questions. That's all.
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you. Mark?
Thanks for your question. Yes, first of all, public comment, we follow a similar approach that the county school district follows. I think your suggestion is a good one. Our challenge is, if we receive those questions, our board doesn't meet in advance to address those questions, and that's very difficult. We're working very hard with the communications team here to improve better responsiveness. That's a question we receive from a lot of families. If questions raised, and there's a whole myriad of questions that have been raised in public comment, and we recognize we need to do a better job on those responses that are not considered confidential. So we're going to work very diligently with the communications team and make those improvements. We have a communication committee, and we're trying to work very hard to make those improvements. I think you heard earlier from both PTO and SAC, we received a lot of feedback about improving our communications, and one of those areas is the area that you're bringing up. And I am committed to make those improvements, as are my fellow board members. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for that. And if there is an additional thing is, if there's a way to follow up on some of the things and respond to the questions in some other form, you know, afterwards, after you've had a chance to meet and deliberate, is there some kind of a form or feedback or in the minutes, the things that you can address, maybe you can put them into the minutes or something along those lines so that people can have some kind of continuity?
Yes. In the minutes, we do identify all the questions. I think if you've seen the minutes, if the question is a confidential matter or a family matter, we do not respond to those publicly.
Of course not.
But I have committed to meet with any parent who wants to meet with me and other board members or the administrative staff to address any specific questions. But I'll reiterate, our intent is to improve our responsiveness, make sure everyone knows what we've done with a particular question going forward in the coming year. So I thank you for your feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a little bit of a follow-up, since I spent most of my career in the state system, which involved the care and feeding of various governmental boards, I actually have some ideas about how you guys might want to go forward with this. Maybe I'll have an opportunity to share with you. I know how frustrating it is. Every public board has some type of public comment period. You get up and you say your piece, and then you sit down, and the meeting goes on because they already have an agenda that was set a couple weeks in advance. So, you know, it would be nice to see a mechanism to have a way to get those more responsive. So, yes.
Good morning. My name is Amy Zerbel. I have a 10th grade student. We've been here since 6th grade. So we've gotten an opportunity to see the growth and just the amazing amount of accomplishments this community has afforded students across all sectors. By the time you get to where we are with our students, I love seeing all the things that were up there about what's happening in elementary and middle school, and with each one of those seasons, those were the things that I was looking for as a parent. But now that we are in high school, our focus is on college. And I'd love to know where the planning process is right now to really talk about how to build out a robust college planning program here, because since we started the high school, we've had turnover, startovers. We understand that there's more changes coming, and you know, we're approaching this next year. This is our opportunity, and so all of this is fantastic. But if that doesn't translate into college preparedness and opportunity, then I feel like we're missing a window. I would like to know kind of what's on the plan for that going forward.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you for the question. We certainly recognize that at each phase of life in our school, students have different needs. And certainly when they get into their 10th grade year, they're beginning that process of looking at college. We are very fortunate that we have a very skilled, very seasoned college and career counselor on our staff currently. Her name is Mrs. Ewing. And she has a career of expertise in developing those relationships with colleges and then helping students and families, parents as well, walk that walk through the application process, through the writing process that is required for those applications, and being sure that our resumes and students and transcripts all present exactly what those colleges are looking for so that students receive entrance into their best fit college. So that is something that our guidance department is working on as we speak. Each year we're of course looking at improvements that can be made along those lines, but we do have a dedicated staff member that is her entire focus, is that process. And so I think as you get further into the process, with your student, you'll see we've had a 10th grade parent night to kind of on-ramp, and that will continue through the junior and senior year to ensure that parents and families have that background that they need to understand in order to make sure that their child receives acceptance to their best fit school.
All right, then maybe you can clarify, because I understand she's leaving, and that there is not a plan in place for that next stage, number one. Number two, I was at that parent planning meeting for 10th grade students, and was surprised to hear that there was a huge push for community college, and that it was not for universities. So the secondary question was, of the universities that were listed, or higher education, is that universities or are those community colleges? What are the graduation rates, and what does it really look like in terms of where our students are going? I'd also like to know what's being done, because during that presentation there was no discussion of path to scholarship, what that looks like. Again, there's amazing things. I don't want to overshadow all the amazing things that are happening, but we're at this stage where, we're kind of, all of this needs to culminate, into tangible transition.
Absolutely, understood. And you are correct that she is retiring at the end of this year. She has designed the program to live in her legacy. It is not something that is riding on her shoulders individually. And she is helping us very actively to make sure that we find that best fit person that will be able to move us forward through the next several years or many years. As far as your question regarding the scholarship and that type of thing, we do have pathways. We use a program called Naviance that is the house for all of that information to make sure that students know and understand when any scholarship becomes available that might be applicable for them. But certainly, I would love to sit down with you and chat more about that specifically so that we can be sure that we're very clear in our communication to the rest of the public on what happens once you get to be in those high school years and you're looking at your college potential for next year or for the following years. And regarding the question about, are these colleges community college, are they four-year, are they, what is their status? Certainly, our goal is to help students find that best fit for them. And every student is different, their needs, their desires are different, and their families' wishes for them are different as well. And we respect all of those wishes. If you take a look, our website is being updated right now with this current graduating class, but you can see all of the colleges, whether they're local colleges, abroad, across the whole gamut of different places that students will be attending after they leave us here after their senior year. So I would encourage you to definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
Just to add a little bit to your question, we have a very complex student body in what their interests are. And a few years ago, our board of directors wanted us to go strong in concurrent enrollment. Hannah Reese took on that program. We looked deeply into the state law to make sure that we could position our students, anyone who wanted to start college courses. So at 9th grade by state law, students could take college courses. We decided to eliminate our honors section. If you were ready for honors section, you were ready for college. And so we offer many of the courses here on campus, but then several of our students go completely all day. We have three levels, one taking the courses here, one the second level, some at community college, and we also have partnerships with four-year institutions because our students, especially in math, go beyond the offerings at Arapahoe Community College. And then the third level is 100% off campus, and of course that's student choice. Some students are ready as 14-year-olds. Community college has students as young as 10 years old attending classes there. It's very individual. And so we don't push community college. What we do is it's a nice step into higher ed because as soon as they take a course with a professor at community college or at a four-year institution, they realize it's a whole different game. They don't have the same care that our teachers have, and so many prefer to take the concurrent enrollment here, and many of our staff have doctorate level, master's level in their content, and so they get full credit. And then you may have seen a few slides. We've been talking about it for over a year. Douglas County's Board of Ed approved unanimously for us to pursue PTech, Pathways in Technology. This past week, we'll have a big rollout. It's a huge announcement. We have been approved to do grades 13, 14, meaning students can stay in high school for 6 years if they wish. And those 2 extra years by state law have to be in STEM pathway, but at virtually no cost to parents, just like concurrent enrollment. Our students can continue at STEM, but be at either community college or other pathways that we establish for grades 13, 14. And we have, which sometimes you don't think about in Douglas County, about 140 students who are free and reduced lunch. Those are families that live below the federal poverty level. And for these students to go 2 years of college without expense will be a game changer. So that's just a little bit more to your question.
And I should mention, we did run over a little bit on the first half of this, so we can run over a little bit on the Q&A sessions. We'd like 12:15 if we need to. Hi.
Hi, so I'm Carly Gustafson. I have a 7th grader. This is our 2nd year at STEM. He enjoys the school and is very much looking forward to being here through 12th grade. I have a couple questions regarding special education. I appreciate the feedback that the 3 claims that are still being worked through are not considered a systemic program or a systemic problem. But if there's anything that could be provided as feedback to those of us who, are interested and hear the other side of it, can you say, generically, here's things we're doing to improve to make sure this doesn't happen again? That would be really great to hear, I think, today. Secondly, if Ms. Reese, if you could elaborate a little bit on the plan for next year specific to 504 plan students. Because I think you were very focused on special education, and rightly so, but that's a whole other community that is still, of course, going to be part of that program.
Good question. I should mention, I do have 2 of my own 4 kids are on IEPs, or one was, and the other still is. So I know how important it is.
And I also know how important that is. 2 of my 3 kids were on IEPs when they were coming through the system. And so this is something that's near and dear to my heart. When we started Jefferson Academy back in the 90s, charter schools had a negative rap that they were cherry-picking kids, trying to get the cream of the crop, etc. And I said to our board at the time and our principal, charter schools, the concept is to be a competition for the status quo, to be even a model for perhaps change in the status quo. And if we don't take all the kids that other schools take, then we have nothing to brag about. It just infuriated me to see some of these magnet schools who would counsel their kids out the door, and they had all the best and the brightest, and then brag about how great their scores were compared to the other schools in the district. I said from the very first time that we have to take the same, anybody who comes in this door has to have an equal opportunity, just the same as the neighborhood school down the street, or we've got nothing to talk about in terms of educational innovation. And thankfully, I think that attitude has taken hold in the charter school movement as a whole, and then particularly with respect to this school takes its obligation to take whoever comes through those doors, where they are, when they are, whatever they have to, in terms of their special challenges, and deal with them just exactly the way the neighborhood school down the street does. Now, you've asked about these three ongoing issues that I anticipate will be resolved shortly. And as you might imagine, those are extremely confidential. We won't even talk about who those people are or whatever. I can say I've looked at them, and all I can say in terms of generalities is what I've said before. They are issues that I think are idiosyncratic to those particular cases, and they do not reflect upon the program as a whole. I think you have an amazing team here at STEM doing yeoman's work with respect to special education, and so yes, we've had some complaints, but I think that you have to keep in mind that you've got 1,100 families here, 1,100 families, and you've got maybe 1% complaining a lot, and you've got 116 SPED students. And so what it tells me is you've got around 98% seem to be particularly happy with the services that they're receiving. And so in terms of your second question with 504s and IEPs, the process is fairly straightforward. If you think that your kid needs a 504 or an IEP, or the school independently thinks so, there's an evaluation process. And if after the evaluation process is over, there is a plan, either a 504 plan or an IEP. And then going forward from there, it's pretty easy to determine whether there's compliance with the law or not, in terms of this is what the IEP says. You get these many minutes, for example, of auditory or occupational therapy or whatever, and this is what the kids have been provided, and there's records being kept all along. Now, there can be a disconnect sometimes between what the school believes the IEP says. These are what we think that the child needs to access the curriculum and to get what's called a FAPE, free and appropriate public education, and what the parent thinks. And that's where a lot of the friction comes. But there are procedures for resolving that friction, and once the IEP is in place, then it's pretty easy to track whether those services are being provided. I hope I answered the question. Thanks. As best I can.
Yeah. And most of the questions out of parent feedback that we had before we started our presentations were IEP based, which is why we focused there. But our 504s are as well next year are going to be spread out among our counselors and social workers. So each case manager will have a smaller load. I'll oversee the whole process. We're really focused on consistency, effectiveness, good communication for everybody. So just the same as before, we're going to have consistent paperwork, consistent communication. If you have any questions, you have any concerns, call me. I'll help with anything I possibly can.
Okay, hello.
My name is Kristen DeBeer. I have one student in 11th grade. My question also is related to special education, specifically identification for special education that Mr. Arrington just spoke to. Just doing some calculations with 116 students on IEPs divided by 1,850 students here, that tells me you're identifying about 6.27% of the population here at STEM. The state average is about 10.3%, and the national average is somewhere between 12 and 13%. That tells me that here at STEM we're under-identifying students. STEM, by its very nature, tends to draw students who have more needs, not fewer. So I'd like to know more about the RTI process here, how long students stay in RTI before they're evaluated. Once they are evaluated, what are the criteria for actually identifying them and putting them on IEP plans, or deciding that they need a 504 instead of an IEP.
Okay. Barry.
There's always a problem extrapolating from bare percentages to individual needs. So the issue is not what the state's percentages are, or Douglas County's percentages are, or what, and then comparing that to STEM's percentages. STEM is in a neighborhood, an area where you would expect the percentages to be lower than the state, certainly, and perhaps even lower than the district. And so I think it's a mistake to just say, oh, your percentages are lower a little bit than the districts, therefore you're under-identifying students. The issue is whether anybody who wants to be evaluated for 504 or IEP, their student has that absolute right. And it's the parents that typically drive that process. And no parent is ever turned away. If any parent who wants to have their child evaluated for an IEP or a 504 has an absolute right. And STEM has never, not even once, said, oh, we don't think you should be even evaluated. We don't want to add to our SPED numbers or our 504 numbers. So just bare comparisons based upon percentages can be misleading. And I'll leave who wants to take the response to intervention question?
So great question. RTI stands for Response to Intervention, and that is actually an old system that is no longer in place anymore. We're using MTSS, which is Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And MTSS is really a system that is provided provided for students to allow them to access the curriculum in any way that they may see fit or may need. And our teachers work very closely with all of our students and families to ensure that if a student starts to struggle, if a student is experiencing some type of difficulty, our teachers are able to wrap their arms around that situation and understand the situation so that they're able to provide those best supports for that student. Ms. Boland came up because she is actually going to be overseeing our MTSS or RTI process next year to again ensure that consistency throughout our K-12 model. Did you come up because you wanted to speak about it? Awesome, okay. She wasn't on the agenda, so this is...
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. I will be addressing the RTI process, or overseeing the RTI MTSS process next year. So in direct answer to your question, if a student has areas of concern, the teachers identify in groups, and they have RTI teams, and they identify what those skill gaps are that need to be filled for a child. And they meet together, find out what the areas of greatest concern are, and then they come up with an idea, an intervention that they can try in the classroom. They try those for 6 weeks. If it's working, that's great, and the gap has been filled. If not, they can continue, or if they see another skill gap, they can certainly address that and try for the next 6 weeks a new intervention to fill that skill gap. If after 2 cycles of those 6 weeks, and sometimes the teachers will say, you know, it's not finite, that's the suggestion, but if they're like, gosh, I feel like we're really on the cusp here, we'd like to try it in 2 or 3 weeks, they certainly can. If the child, if they were like, okay, something was happening, and this really isn't an area of concern, they can go a little bit shorter as well. But if after 2 cycles, that student, the concerns remain, then they'll talk with the special ed team, the LSS department, and say, you know, we continue to have struggles with this child, and we would like you to take a look. Just overarching though, the RTI team does work with our LSS team a lot for those ideas. They really support us in the MTSS department to give us good ideas to help fill those skill gaps for those children. Did that answer your question? Wonderful. What's this?
Back up here. You know, just another observation, because after all, they're taking you and dribble this stuff out to you. But as the charter school movement was growing in Colorado, we did at the state level start to see a pattern. And one of those patterns were parents who said, you know, I don't think my kid needs special education. I think they need a more personalized educational environment. And so you saw parents who were attracted to charter schools for that reason. They didn't want to have a special ed. Now, this was, you know, a couple decades ago. I think there was more of a stigma to that than there is now. Nowadays, you see that more in terms of the Montessori or the Waldorf choice programs, which have radically different, you know, educational environments than necessarily a STEM school. But that's something to keep in mind, is that, you know, parents might look at to a specialized school and a specialized program as an alternative. And you can't really force a parent to, you know, to go that route if they don't want to. So it's just something to keep in mind that, you know, you have some more options here. Yes?
Hi, my name is Lynn Slack. I have 2 children, a 9th grader and a 12th grader, and we're finishing our 4th year here. I really wish the lady in the pink jacket that spoke first hadn't left, because I'd like to follow up on the principal question. And just as an aside, I think it was very dismissive of just saying you're not going to answer her question. I think maybe she didn't word it well, but I think that there are concerns around that issue that we do need to talk about. I don't care about the details of someone's termination. I think we all know that that's private. But what are we going to do in the wake of that termination? And it comes at the same time as a major change in structure. Now we're going to have one principal over 12 grades, and I think it's going to look very different. So I want to know, what is that going to look like? I'm going to give you a little example. I was at a cyberbullying, I think, was a little seminar that was offered here, and Cody Blackburn happened to be here. I think he was maybe, you know, starting it off or whatever. And because he knew my kids, he knew who I was, and just came over to say, hey, how's it going? And I said, okay, or whatever, and gave him some vague answer. And he knew something wasn't right because he'd had conversations with me before. We got in a conversation about there was a problem. I didn't call him, I didn't go to him with that problem, but it then started something that we resolved later on. That's because he knew who my kids were and knew who I was. It doesn't feel like the new structure is going to have that kind of traditional principal who goes to the soccer games and goes to the play and knows your kids. And if there's a problem, maybe sees them in the office, comes up and goes, hey, Joey, what's going on? Why are you not in class? Or whatever. What do principals do? What happens when the principal's gone? How did we replace that? I don't think Ms. Wayman is taking on the full weight of that. And what is that going to look like moving forward?
Thank you. I think that's a good question in terms of, how that is going to be addressed on the reorganization.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you so much for asking. One of the most beautiful parts of the structure that we are planning next year is that we are going to take this role of the traditional principal and we are dividing it up so that individuals can focus on the deliverables for parents. We know and we understand, we're parents ourselves, but we have heard from our families that that connection with a face, a name, a safe person, that is critical for our culture here at STEM. And so what we are doing next year is we will have a person that's I showed it on that slide, the student and family culture and experience person, that will be their daily task every day is what activities are happening today, how am I going to get to know these kids better. They are going to be the face that is seen everywhere from the hallway to field trips to prom to soccer games. They will be that face so that we are sure that we don't miss that connection, that piece, that person who is focused on student culture, family culture here at STEM, making sure that we are cultivating and caring for that culture. And that person will not be distracted or pulled in 100 different directions trying to fulfill all of the roles of that traditional principal. They will be focused on that student experience, that student culture. And I know that this year has been a difficult time for some of our older students, and that is something that we are so excited to be able to solve some of those problems. Moving into next year, we have already started that on-ramping to make sure that students will, at the end of this year, they will know this is the person who is going to be there for me. I'm going to see them at my games. I'm going to understand that they are here chatting with me at lunch. I'm going to see them in my classrooms. They'll know my name, they'll know who I am, they'll know who my mom is. And that's our goal for next year. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Just a follow-up, so do we know who that person is, and is that the person we would contact if we had a concern?
Yes, well we have not officially rolled this out, but Mrs. Boland, who was up here earlier, will be the one who will be filling that role for our secondary students next year. And certainly if you have a question, you know Mrs. Boland, she is all heart, as Dr. Bucher says, and she would be more than happy to address any questions or concerns that you have thinking about moving into next year. Thank you.
And just one other aside. This isn't like a regular district school. You can volunteer for the accountability committee, you can get involved in the PTO, and there's more flexibility and more opportunity for feedback. So if it looks like there's some bugs in the new system, you can ask to have them addressed. Yes?
Hi, my name is Tom Watts. I have 2 students here, 6th and 9th grade. Just 2 comments I have. My wife is more involved with the schooling than I am. But one thing is I noticed is that the kids are really sensitive about teacher turnover. And they talk about it a lot, and it's kind of amazing how much they talk about and how concerned they are about new teachers and if they'll be qualified for the subjects that they'll be taking in the future. So that's one comment. The other comment I have is I noticed that there's a lot of group work at STEM, which is fantastic. And the only thing I noticed is that they complain about is like some students don't take responsibility, they don't do work, and there doesn't seem to be a structure to the group. Like the students aren't being taught from the beginning, like, well, we do group work and this is a structure we want to follow so that we can, show accountability, who's doing what the group is about. And so I'm just suggesting that there may be some type of teaching that needs to happen about how we would like a group to function, and this is what we'd like to document. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, good question.
Thank you. What grade level are your students in?
6th and 9th grade.
6th and 9th grade. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So I want to make sure I address both of your questions. Kids are very sensitive to teacher turnover, and we know that. That is such an attribute of STEM teachers because our teachers have such close personal relationships with students. And so we know that that is something that really affects students when a teacher decides to leave. And that's one of the reasons that we don't announce which teachers are leaving. We don't put that out there because our teachers are so careful about the message that they want their children to hear, their own students to hear. And so we do know that because of those close relationships, it's very personal to teachers and to their students and ultimately their families as well. But I think that we have to have faith and believe in our teachers that they are making the best choices for themselves and their own families. And I know that they want nothing but the best for our students here. And so I really want all of our teachers to have the opportunity to speak freely and openly with their students about their own lives, and hopefully they can maintain that respect for teachers and for teachers at this school, and then ultimately transfer that respect and that love and care onto the new teacher that will be taking over for them. We do have a great process in place where teachers who are leaving, they are part of the hiring process. They're able to say, yes, my students, they will love this teacher, they will relate to this teacher, they will know that this teacher has their best interest in mind, or not. And so those teachers are part of the interviewing process so that they can help us identify someone who will be able to fill their shoes the following year. So thank you for that question. And then the second part about the group work. That's something that we work on every day here at STEM. How do we teach students to work together, to collaborate? We know that industry is asking for people and students, new people coming into their field, to be able to do that. Everything is all about those relationships that you make within your team at work or your team at school. So generally we have a scaffolded process throughout the elementary, middle, and high school, where the elementary level, we're being more specific about our direct instruction on how we work together, how we team. We're assigning, you're the leader, you're the scribe, you're the record keeper, whatever those different roles are. And as they move through middle and high school, we try to work with students so that they can understand their own strengths, so that maybe someday they're saying, I want to be the researcher, I'm really good at researching, and that's how I want to contribute to the group. We also, at every level, have a process for dealing with students who may not be pulling their weight in the group. And that's something I would encourage you or your students to reach out to their teachers to make sure that they fully understand what their process and their responsibility is for helping to identify or ensure that all students are participating in those group collaborations. That's a very important skill, that self-advocacy piece, to make sure that kids are able to say, this is my responsibility, but I'm also holding my peers accountable for their responsibility. So thank you for the questions.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, I'm Bob. I have a second grader here, and next year I'll have a kindergartner starting, and my second grader will be in third grade.
At some point in the future, perhaps.
Class of 2036. So one, I want to say, I'm actually a little bit curious / excited about the reorg because I'm a teacher right now at another school, and I noticed that our principals have so many responsibilities in so many different categories that a lot of things do kind of slip through the cracks. And having this more specialized role for each administrator might make them each more focused and better at not letting anything slip through the cracks. So I'm kind of excited to see how that turns out. My actual question though was, I can't tell if this was a rumor or an announcement I heard last year that there's going to be another STEM school started, or maybe that was a rumor, but somewhere in the area or somewhere might be by the same board or by the same company. And if that is true, would that be populated by employees from here, like when you open a new Home Depot near your Home Depot, and split the staff in half, or would it be wholly populated by, sorry to compare Home Depot, would that be wholly populated by new employees and new students? Or maybe that was just a rumor. I apologize.
Oh, good question.
that too.
Good luck with your growing family. Rumors are very difficult to address. I'm not sure what the rumor was about another school. Certainly there are other charters who apply to the school district and seek to be approved, have a new charter, and maybe some that are working in that direction. We're not aware of those at this point. We have a strategic plan in place, and that could mean we might be able to address some of the waiting list students that we have going forward. And thank you for your comments on our restructure.
Loved your statement on the restructure, because when we look at job descriptions for principals in other districts, we look at pages and pages of job duties, and we know it creates job burnout, because when you're responsible for curriculum, teacher evaluation, parent calls, special ed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, there's no way to do that job really well. And we're hoping with our restructure that if everyone's living in their ikigai, that they'll bring great passion, and that you actually will have a more significant relationship with these people over time. But on the back of the agenda, we put a statement from Alan Gottlieb, and he's the one that created Chalkbeat. He used to be the education editor for the Weather Post several years ago. He's well known nationally as being an expert in what's next in education. He did a story for Colorado Succeeds, and was here as part of that, and was very impressed, and has since connected us with a lot of other thought leaders. But he said what we're doing is exactly what leading schools are doing for restructure. Who knew? We thought that this messy process we were doing was a grassroots. Turns out there's lots of schools who are on the leading edge, and one of them is the Green School in Denver. They have an innovation grant, which means they have a bubble around them to be innovative from a highly unionized district. And they're on this pathway too, so they're becoming one of our sister schools, where we learn from the mistakes they may have made along their way, so that we can accelerate. So yes, for any of us who work in schools, we know the principal role is almost impossible, if not impossible. And in fact, they collect data on admin retention rate. And Douglas County a few years ago was close to 40% attrition. So 40% of their principals were leaving, and nationally it's a role that's very difficult to do well. So we're hoping that we can support each of these people to be living in their ikigai.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, my name is Sarah Schesser. I have an 11th grader and a graduate. I think I have statements, not questions. Don't underestimate the sensitivity, as you call it, of the children about teachers leaving. My daughter comes home in a full-blown panic regularly because she's heard some teacher is leaving. To the point where she's like, I don't know if I should stay here. We're staying, don't worry, whatever. But my other point is to curriculum, which has not been talked about at all. When she was planning out what she was going to take, she's a very driven child. She knows exactly what she wants and how she's getting there. She's got completely derailed this year. When it was time to sign up for classes for 12th grade, the classes she expected to be available were not. How is it communicated to our students? You only have a choice of taking AP Bio this year, not this year, and this year. Because if they find out this year, they're out of luck. My child cannot take an AP Bio next year, even though it was her plan. She's planning to go into med school. She's definitely missing a key to her plan to be successful in her future. And I get it that it's a smaller school, so you can't offer every class every year, but you need to communicate really well to our students what's available when, so they can plan in 10th grade. I need to take AP Bio in 11th grade because they ain't gonna be there in 12th grade. That's it. Thank you.
I'd just like to say a couple words about employee turnover and in the context of charter schools. perhaps the key innovation of the Charter School Act from 1993 was the concept that teachers and other staff who are employed by a charter school are not protected by tenure like neighborhood schools. My wife was a teacher at a neighborhood school, and she was a master teacher. She's retired now after 32 years, and she was just a tremendous teacher. But in that particular school, there were also teachers that were not so great, and that principal had the choice of trying to shift, not getting rid of the bad teachers, but trying to shift them into a place where they did the least damage. And that stultifying, tenure-driven personnel system of neighborhood schools is one of the reasons that charter schools are able to innovate, is that we're not part of that. Plus, in charter schools, especially a newer charter school like the one that your students attend, the teachers tend to be younger, they tend to be more in the family raising age of their lives, and so because of all those factors, you have the dynamic that there's going to be a little bit more teacher churn than in neighborhood schools. So again, this is one of those times where we're just, based upon my experience with neighborhood schools and charter schools over the years, that just comparing their percentages and bare percentages can be misleading unless you take into account the unique circumstances of each one.
Thanks, Barry. Additional?
To the scheduling piece, so one of the things our counseling department did wonders on this year is creating a separate middle school and high school academic planning guide that is more thorough and complete and accurate. And then for high school classes, we're moving toward a schedule exactly to address that issue, so that's predictable. So AP Bio and Chem, for example, will be on alternating years. Prior to that, it was a student demand system, so every kid would sign up, only 3 kids are interested in the class, so we couldn't offer it. So this way it'll be predictable, it's not wonderful for our current seniors. However, concurrent enrollment is an option, so feel free to reach out to me and I can help that student take the biology class at ECC and go ahead and get college credit.
Okay, I think we have time for 2 more, and as luck would have it, it appears we have 2 more people. So, hello.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Sandwich, and I have a 7th grader here. My questions are pretty simple. One is, do we have a commitment from the board for the meetings to be televised, or for parents who cannot make it to the meetings? We understand, we just heard from our PTO that they have the technology and the ability to do that, and I'd like to know if you're going to make that a consistency.
There's a legal aspect to this that you might not be aware of. The statute, the open meeting statute, says that once you begin doing that, you can never stop. And so it has this ratchet effect, and I don't know what the board's plan is for this, but I would add that the fact that from a legal counsel perspective, I actually advise my schools to be very careful before starting to do something like that, because once you go down that road, you no longer have any flexibility whatsoever. Mark, do you have an additional?
As I said earlier, we're working with PTO and SAC and our communications team to improve how we document the meetings, how we communicate. I don't have a clear answer to your question right now. Part of our concern is exactly that, is how we do this logistically, and what happens if we can't do it. Are we in non-compliance with the legislation that controls these open meetings in the first place? So I hope to have a better answer for you will be discussed during our board meetings in the future as we work with our communications team and SAC and PTO.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. One of the reasons why I asked is at the last board meeting, we had 2 parents who stood up with some serious concerns. And when the 3-minute mark came about, our executive director had her phone with a very loud alarm that was going off, and these 2 parents were heartbroken because they were trying to plead to the board to have their voices heard. And I was just a simple person who was listening and watching, and it broke my heart because we were ahead of schedule and those two parents only wanted 30 seconds more. And I think that, they should get that respect from our board meetings.
Well, let me just say the 3 minutes is the guideline that we have moved forward with. But if I recall correctly, we did not cut those people off in spite of the alarm going off. We wanted to hear their complete thoughts. And I'll reiterate, if it's appropriate, we will meet with those families directly. We're working with other responses that are more broad-based, that they're not really confidential matters that require a one-on-one meeting. But thank you for your feedback.
Okay. Thank you. Last question.
My name is Nicole Churchill-Jones, and I just want to thank everybody, not just the staff that's here on a Saturday, but the parents, the people who are involved in showing up, the people who are asking hard questions of the school, and the school responding to those hard questions. So first off, I just want to make that statement. I do want to readdress the question about the expansion of starting another charter. I know that another STEM school, maybe not another charter, but has been discussed before at board meetings. It has been, I think we were even maybe on the district's agenda at one point in regards to Sterling Ranch. So, and then that was removed. But I just like some further clarification about STEM expanding to another school. And again, I want to end, especially since I'm the last person, on a positive note that I really do appreciate this, and I appreciate the parents asking the questions and the school addressing those issues. So thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you. And just a little aside, I've seen a lot of expansions and replications in my time. Whenever you have a really good school, people come to you and say, can you start one over here? And it's a lot more difficult than you think it is. You think, well, can't you just, figure out what you're working here? It doesn't always work that way. But I just wanted to do those 2 cents worth because I've seen replications that didn't work out the way they ought to have. So.
Thanks for your question, and thanks for the positive comments. As far as expansion, we rolled out earlier this year at the board meeting with SAC, PTO, staff, and so forth, our strategic plan. Replication, you mentioned Sterling Ranch. We cannot control if another entity suggests that we're placing a school in another location. Currently, we have no agreements with any other jurisdiction to put a school in those areas. But as Tony said, and as our staff would indicate, we have many requests to bring our school or our school model into other locations, whether they're here in Douglas County or in other parts of Colorado and other states. We're considering all of them, but we currently have not firmed up any specific plans. And when we do have a plan, that plan, if it does require a new charter or a charter modification, that'll all become public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to remind everyone that this was recorded, and I believe it will appear on the website. As well, we will have written minutes and any questions that were not adequately addressed. Hopefully, will be further expounded upon there. So thank you all very much.
I just want to reiterate, if you do have further questions or comments on this first day of STEM, which is going to become a regular event in the school, please get those comments or questions to communications as Kate Ringwald and others earlier